She looked me in the eye, and her voice was flat, almost rehearsed. She said, "My therapist says you are the source of my anxiety." For a moment I just sat there, staring at her, wondering if I had heard her right. All the years we had spent together, all the nights we held each other close, all the promises we made, it all crumbled into that single sentence. I nodded slowly, and instead of exploding, instead of defending myself or begging for clarity, I said, "All right." That was it. Just one word. She blinked, like she expected a fight. Maybe she wanted me to argue, to cry, to demand explanations. But I didn't. I stood up, went to the bedroom, and pulled out my bag. She followed me with her eyes, confused, but not enough to stop me. I began folding clothes carefully, one by one, slipping them into the bag with a calm she didn't understand. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, waiting for me to lose control. But I didn't. In her mind, maybe she thought I was running away to cool off, that I would come back after a night of sulking. She probably thought this was just another fight we would brush under the rug. But as I zipped up the bag, I felt a weight lifting off me, a quiet strength I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't just packing clothes. I was packing away years of silent suffering, of swallowing my words, of carrying the blame she kept throwing on me. Before I left, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote her a note. I didn't write paragraphs, no explanations, no defenses, no anger, just a few simple lines. Enough to let her know I was done. Enough to make her realize she had pushed me past the point of return. As I folded the paper and placed it where she would find it, my mind drifted back. Back to when things weren't this way. When love still felt like love. I remembered how it started, the laughter, the inside jokes, the feeling that we were a team against the world. She used to smile at me like I was her safe place. She used to hold my hand in crowded rooms like she never wanted to let go. But somewhere along the way, that love twisted into something darker. Her words grew sharper, her patience shorter. The warmth in her eyes turned cold. I noticed the complaints first, about how I didn't listen enough, how I didn't understand her, how I wasn't trying hard enough. I thought they were normal, just part of the ups and downs every couple goes through. But slowly, those complaints became accusations, and the accusations became blame. Every bad day she had became my fault. Every tear she cried was because of me. She went to therapy to heal, but instead of finding peace, she came back with labels, and each label had my name on it. She said the therapist thought I was too controlling, then that I was too distant, then, finally, that I was the root of her anxiety. I had carried those words like bricks on my shoulders, trying to fix myself, trying to be better. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. And that night, when she finally looked at me and said it outright, something in me broke. Or maybe it didn't break, it woke up. So I packed, I wrote the note, and I left. Without shouting, without slamming doors, without giving her the satisfaction of seeing me beg. Because sometimes, the loudest answer you can give isn't with words. It's with silence, and walking away without looking back was the only way I knew I could finally breathe again. When I rewind to the beginning, it almost feels like another life. Back then, she was the person I thought I'd been waiting for all along. We would stay up late, talking about everything and nothing, sharing dreams like kids who believed the future would be perfect just because we wanted it to be. She made me laugh until my stomach hurt. She made me feel seen in a way no one else had before. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the kind of love that lasts. We had our little routines. The morning coffee she made just the way I liked it. The way she texted me first thing when I left for work, just to say she missed me already. We planned trips we couldn't afford, gave each other silly nicknames, and promised that no matter what, we would always be on the same team. In those early days, I would have sworn she was the one person in the world who would never turn against me. But somewhere down the line, small cracks started to show. At first, I thought they were just normal parts of being in a relationship. No love is perfect, right? She would snap at me for little things like forgetting to take out the trash or not noticing she had cut her hair. They were small moments, but they started to pile up. I told myself it was stress, that she was tired, that if I just gave her more love and patience, she'd find her way back to me. But it didn't stop there. The complaints grew sharper. She began criticizing me for the way I spoke, for how I handled work stress, for the way I laughed too loud in public. Things that once made us laugh together became the very reasons she said she couldn't stand me. I started walking on eggshells in my own home, afraid that anything I did would spark another argument. Then came the therapy. At first, I supported it. I wanted her to feel better, to find peace. I even drove her to some sessions, waiting outside with the hope that she would come out lighter, more hopeful. And sometimes she did. But slowly, those sessions began to turn into weapons. She would come home with new words, new diagnoses, new reasons why I was the villain in her story. She told me her therapist said I was dismissive, that I invalidated her feelings, that I was the root of her spiraling anxiety. I remember lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if it was true. Was I really the problem? Was I blind to the damage I was causing? I started questioning everything about myself. Every word I spoke, every action I took. I began to believe maybe I was broken, maybe I wasn't, capable of loving someone the right way. The guilt ate at me. I apologized constantly, even when I didn't know what I was apologizing for. I promised I would try harder, I would listen better, I would change. But no matter what I did, it never seemed to be enough. The more I tried, the more she pushed me down, and the more she used therapy as proof that I was the cause of her pain. Looking back, I see it clearly now. It wasn't about therapy. It wasn't about healing. It was about control, about shifting every burden onto my shoulders until I could barely stand under the weight of it. But at the time, I couldn't see that. All I could see was the person I loved slipping away, and I was desperate to stop it, even if it meant losing myself in the process. The breaking point didn't come all at once. It wasn't one huge fight or one final scream that shattered everything. It was the slow erosion of who I was, until one day I woke up and barely recognized myself. I remember lying in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, my chest so tight it felt like I couldn't breathe. I would replay our arguments over and over in my head, wondering if I really had said something wrong, if maybe I'd missed some subtle way I hurt her without realizing it. But the truth was, it didn't matter what I said or how I said it. Somehow, I was always wrong. If I tried to comfort her, I was smothering. If I gave her space, I was distant. If I spoke honestly, I was cruel. If I stayed quiet, I was cold. Every path led to failure, and no matter how carefully I stepped, she would twist it into proof that I was the source of her suffering. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. She would insist I had said things I knew I hadn't, and when I protested, she would shake her head and say I was forgetting or lying to myself. She told me I never listened, even when I repeated her words back to her. She said I didn't care, even though I built my entire life around trying to ease her pain. It was like being trapped in a maze with no way out. Every corner turning me back into the villain she had decided I was. The gaslighting was the worst. I would leave a conversation sure of what had just happened, but by the end, I'd be doubting my own memory, questioning if maybe I was the unreasonable one. I would apologize just to make the tension stop, even when I knew deep down I had done nothing wrong, and with every apology a piece of me broke off and disappeared until I was hollow inside, just going through the motions of existing beside her. There were nights when I would get up quietly and sit in the dark living room just to breathe, just to feel like I still had some control over myself. I would hold my head in my hands and think, maybe I really am the problem. Maybe I am broken. Maybe I don't deserve love if all I can do is cause pain. That thought haunted me more than anything, that maybe she was right, and the reason I felt so destroyed was because I was the one doing the destroying. The grief was unbearable. It wasn't just about losing her, it was about losing myself. I wasn't the man I had been when we started. That man laughed easily. That man had confidence. That man believed he was worthy of love. But now, I was living like a ghost in my own life, drained, beaten down, and convinced that maybe I was the curse in the story. It was then I realized I wasn't in a relationship anymore. I was in a battlefield. And the war wasn't between us. It was inside me. It was me against the version of myself she had built in her head, a version I didn't recognize but one I couldn't seem to escape. And that realization was the breaking point. Because when you lose love, it hurts. But when you lose your sense of self, it destroys you. It didn't happen overnight, but one evening, after another fight that ended in silence, I felt something inside me shift. I didn't shout, I didn't cry. I didn't even try to defend myself anymore. I just sat there, staring at the wall, realizing there was nothing left to save. That night was the beginning of my exit. I stopped wasting energy on arguments that went nowhere. I stopped trying to prove I wasn't the monster she believed me to be. Every time she accused me, I let the words fall into the air and vanish instead of pulling them into my chest. I realized I didn't have to carry them anymore. I started saving quietly. A little here, a little there, money tucked away, hidden in plain sight, so when the time came, I wouldn't be trapped. I began to detach inch by inch. The things that once triggered guilt or anger in me started to feel distant, like background noise. Her complaints, her accusations, even her cold indifference. It all started to slide past me as I slowly built my own way out. There were moments when I caught myself just watching her. She would sit on the couch scrolling through her phone, completely oblivious. I would fold clothes in silence, pack a bag in my head, and think about how she hadn't even noticed I was slipping away. It was almost surreal. How the person who claimed I was her biggest problem didn't see that I was already gone in every way that mattered. I started writing at night. Not long letters, not endless pages, just a single note, short and final. I wrote it over and over, rewriting the words until they felt right. It wasn't cruel, it wasn't angry, it was simply honest. I wrote, "I hope you find peace, but I can't keep living as your scapegoat. I refuse to let you make me the villain in your story. This is where I leave." That was it. Nothing more, nothing less. Folding that note, sliding it into an envelope, felt heavier than anything I had ever done. It wasn't just paper. It was the weight of years, of love that had rotted into blame, of a future I once dreamed of that no longer existed. I remember the night I started quietly packing, just the essentials. Clothes, documents, the few things that still felt like mine. She was in the other room, laughing at something on her phone, completely unaware that every folded shirt, every item I tucked into my bag was a goodbye. The house was so quiet, it almost felt like it knew what I was doing, like the walls were holding their breath. I didn't cry. I thought I would. I thought the grief would break me when the time came. But what I felt instead was a strange calm. Not joy, not relief, just stillness. The kind of silence that comes after a storm has destroyed everything in its path. In that silence, I knew I was ready to leave the battlefield behind, ready to stop fighting a war that was never mine to win. And with that note folded on the table, I began to let go, not with anger, not with fire, but with quiet strength that she would never see coming. The night I finally left, everything felt strangely ordinary. She was in the kitchen, humming softly as she scrolled through her phone, sipping tea like nothing had ever been wrong. It almost felt surreal, standing there with my bag by the door, knowing this was the last time I would ever see this place as my home. She expected me to stay, always, to keep playing the role she had written for me, the villain, the problem, the weight she carried. She thought I would keep arguing, keep explaining, keep apologizing for things I hadn't done. That was our pattern. But patterns break, and that night I broke it. I placed the folded note on the counter where I knew she would find it. Just a small slip of paper with words she would never expect from me. No anger, no accusations, no begging, just finality. I looked at it one last time before walking toward the door. For a moment I hesitated. My chest felt heavy, like the air itself didn't want me to leave. Memories flashed in fragments. Our first kiss, the long drives where we laughed until we couldn't breathe, the nights when we swore we'd always be on the same team. Those moments stabbed me with the cruel reminder that love had once lived here. But love wasn't enough anymore. Not when it had turned into blame, into poison. I tightened my grip on the bag, took one deep breath, and opened the door. The night air hit my face, cool and sharp, like a reminder that life existed outside those walls. For the first time in so long, I felt free. My steps were slow at first, then steady. I didn't look back. I refused to give the house, or her, that power over me. Behind me, the silence stretched. That silence was my answer to every accusation, every fight, every twisted word she had used against me. She wanted noise. She wanted chaos. She wanted me broken. Instead, I gave her silence, the one thing she never saw coming. As I walked away, I thought about betrayal. Not the kind people talk about in movies or gossip, the cheating, the lies. No, this betrayal was different. It was the betrayal of trust, of respect, of love that had been weaponized against me. She had turned therapy into a hammer, and I had been the nail. She had turned us into you versus me. That was the real betrayal. And yet, in the end, I wasn't leaving with rage. I wasn't plotting revenge. I didn't need to prove her wrong or make her suffer. The greatest revenge wasn't anger. It was peace. Peace in knowing I had chosen myself. Peace in walking away without shouting, without explaining, without giving her another chance to twist my words. The last thing I gave her wasn't an apology, or a fight, or even my presence. It was silence. And sometimes silence is the loudest thing you can leave behind. So I walked away, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the villain. I wasn't broken. I wasn't the problem. I was free, and I didn't look back.